Philippine Sea, October 1944. Through his binoculars, a Japanese naval officer's hands shake uncontrollably. Four massive silhouettes break the horizon line. American battleships, Iowa class. He measures the distance, 23 miles, far beyond his own weapon's effective range. "We're safe here," he tells his captain, voice steady with false confidence. "They cannot possibly reach us from that distance." The captain nods. 23 miles. Throughout naval history, no ship's guns had ever achieved accurate fire at such extreme range. It violated every principle of naval gunnery. Then the horizon ignites. Massive orange blooms of fire. Thunder rolls across the water seconds later. The officer counts instinctively. 1, 2, 3. 40 seconds pass. That's how long the shells travel through the air, arcing higher than mountains, then falling toward his position. The ocean around his vessel erupts. Geysers 200 feet high. Columns of white spray that dwarf his destroyer. Near misses. But at this distance, near misses shouldn't exist. The officer's binoculars fall from his trembling hands. His whisper barely audible above the explosions. "What kind of gun is that?" This is the story of the USS Iowa and her sister ships, the most powerful surface combatants America ever built. 687 feet of steel. 57,000 tons displacement. Crew of 2,700. But none of those statistics mattered to Japanese naval commanders. What terrified them, what fundamentally altered their strategic calculations, were the guns, 9 16-inch naval rifles, each barrel 66 feet long, each shell weighing 2,700 pounds of high explosive and armor-piercing steel, and the range, 24 miles of accurate, devastating fire that rewrote the rules of naval warfare. The Japanese Navy possessed nothing comparable, nothing that even approached these capabilities. Understanding why requires understanding what made these weapons impossible by every previous standard of naval engineering. The shells themselves represented a manufacturing miracle. 2,700 pounds. The weight of a small automobile. Armor-piercing variants designed to penetrate 18 inches of hardened steel plate. Thickness that could stop any previous naval weapon. The propellant load, 660 pounds of powder per shell. When an Iowa fired a full broadside, all 9 guns simultaneously, the entire ship would lurch sideways in the water. The recoil force would move 57,000 tons of steel several feet laterally. Sailors stationed below decks described it as hitting an underwater reef at full speed. The deck plates would jump. Anything unsecured would fly across compartments. The ship's structure would groan under forces that would have torn lesser vessels apart. But the true innovation wasn't raw power. Every navy could build big guns. The revolution was range combined with accuracy. Here's the fundamental problem with long-range naval gunnery. At 10 miles, you can see your target with optical equipment. You can observe shell splashes. You can adjust fire systematically. But at 20 miles, you're shooting over the horizon. The target is invisible. You're lobbing shells in high parabolic arcs, hoping they land somewhere in the target area. Every navy in the world struggled with this limitation. Long range meant imprecision. Battleships could fire far, but they couldn't hit anything reliably beyond visual range. American naval engineers had developed something that changed that equation completely: the Mark 38 gunfire control system. This wasn't a simple rangefinder. It was a network of analog computers, mechanical calculators of extraordinary sophistication that factored in every variable affecting projectile trajectory, ship speed and heading, target speed and heading estimated from radar tracking, wind direction at multiple altitudes, wind speed throughout the shell's flight path, air temperature and barometric pressure affecting air density. The Earth's rotation, yes, the Coriolis effect mattered at these ranges. Even the gradual wear on gun barrels from previous firings, which affected muzzle velocity and therefore trajectory. The system would process all these inputs through mechanical computation, gears, cams, and differential analyzers working at speeds that defied belief for 1940s technology. It would generate firing solutions, and the guns would strike targets the crew never saw with their own eyes. Japanese intelligence had captured documents describing these systems. Their naval analysts studied them carefully. Their conclusion, filed in reports that were read by Admiral Yamamoto himself. This level of accuracy at extreme range violates established principles of naval warfare. Either American intelligence is engaging in deliberate disinformation, or they have achieved a technological breakthrough we cannot currently explain or replicate. They were about to discover which assessment was correct, and the answer would cost them the Pacific War. October 24, 1944. The Battle of Leyte Gulf. The largest naval engagement in human history. Over 200 ships. Thousands of aircraft. The fate of the Philippines and Japan's ability to continue the war hung in the balance. The Japanese combined fleet executed a desperate multi-pronged attack. 3 separate forces converging on the American landing zones from different directions. The plan was to overwhelm American defenders through simultaneous attacks that would split their forces and create confusion. Admiral Takeo Kurita commanded the center force, the most powerful of the 3 Japanese formations. 4 battleships, including the massive Yamato. 8 cruisers. 13 destroyers. His mission? Break through the American defensive screen and destroy the vulnerable transport ships and escort carriers supporting the Philippine invasion. Standing in his way, 2 American battleships, USS Iowa, USS New Jersey. Kurita studied his intelligence reports carefully. The Iowa-class ships were known quantities. Fast, 33 knots, faster than most battleships. Well-armored, 12-inch belt armor, enough to resist most naval gunfire. Dangerous in close combat with their rapid-firing 5-inch secondary batteries. But Kurita believed he held crucial advantages. His fleet massively outnumbered the American force. His flagship, the Yamato, mounted 18.1-inch guns, larger than anything the Americans possessed. If he could force a close-range engagement, his superior numbers and heavier guns would prevail. The flaw in his reasoning: he assumed he could control the engagement range. The battle began at dawn. Kurita's fleet advanced in battle formation, confident. At 22 miles, far beyond what he considered effective combat range, the Iowa opened fire. Kurita's formation watched the horizon erupt with muzzle flashes. Then they waited. At extreme range, there would be significant flight time. 40 seconds. The shells were in the air, climbing miles above the ocean, then falling toward terminal velocity. The Yamato shuddered. A near miss, massive geyser of water erupting 50 yards off the port bow. Then another, and another. At 22 miles, the Americans were bracketing his flagship. Not area bombardment, not suppressive fire. Targeted salvos walking onto his exact position. Kurita couldn't comprehend what he was witnessing. His own guns, the mighty 18.1-inch rifles of the Yamato, had a theoretical maximum range of 26 miles. But at that distance, hitting anything smaller than an island was pure chance. The Americans were placing shells within 50 yards of his ship from beyond the horizon. He ordered his entire fleet to return fire. 38 Japanese capital ships opened fire simultaneously. The ocean between the two fleets became a forest of splashes and explosions. But the Japanese shells fell randomly, some short by miles, some long, none achieving the systematic bracketing that characterized American fire. Kurita made a decision that would haunt him for the remainder of his life. At 0930 hours, with his fleet still intact and possessing overwhelming numerical superiority, he ordered a full retreat. The entire center force, 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, 13 destroyers, turned away, running from 2 American battleships. His officers protested vehemently. They outnumbered the enemy 4-1. They had the firepower to overwhelm the Americans if they could just close the range. Kurita refused. He pointed to another geyser, this one 30 yards from the Yamato's stern. They can hit us precisely. We cannot hit them at all. If we advance, we sail into systematic destruction. We will lose ships one by one without ever landing an effective salvo. That's not a battle. That's a slaughter. The retreat saved his fleet from destruction, but it cost Japan the battle, the Philippines, and ultimately any chance of negotiating a favorable end to the war. All because of guns that could reach farther than Japanese doctrine considered possible. But Leyte Gulf wasn't the only demonstration of the Iowa's impossible capabilities. 4 months earlier, the Marshall Islands, February 1944. Japanese shore defenses, heavily fortified concrete bunkers, artillery positions carved into coral rock by forced labor over 2 years. German engineers had designed the fortifications before Germany's alliance with Japan dissolved. 3 feet of reinforced concrete, steel reinforcement bars, blast doors, ventilation systems that could survive chemical attack. These positions were built to last decades and withstand anything. American Marines needed those defenses destroyed before amphibious landing operations could proceed. The Iowa drew shore bombardment duty. Japanese gunners watched the massive battleship approach their position. They weren't concerned. Their bunkers could withstand sustained artillery fire. Their concrete had been tested against the heaviest Japanese naval guns and held. And more importantly, their own coastal artillery could strike targets up to 12 miles offshore. The Americans would have to come within range to engage effectively. The Iowa stopped 18 miles offshore, far beyond the range of Japanese coastal batteries. The Japanese commander smiled behind his observation periscope. "They cannot touch us from there. This is posturing, psychological warfare. They'll have to bring in aircraft for close support." The Iowa's main battery rotated slowly, the massive turrets elevated to maximum angle, pointing toward the sky, then fired. The Japanese commander watched. Clear skies. No incoming shells visible. He checked his watch. 30 seconds. 40. Still nothing. Then the first bunker exploded. Not damaged. Not cracked. Obliterated. A 2,700-pound armor-piercing shell, arriving at terminal velocity after its parabolic arc, punched through 3 feet of reinforced concrete like paper. The bunker and its entire garrison simply ceased to exist. There was no fire, no smoke, just sudden empty space where a fortification had stood. The commander stared. That bunker was 2 miles inland. The battleship is 18 miles offshore. That means... His voice trailed off as he realized the implication. The shell traveled 20 miles, hit a stationary target, penetrated 3 feet of German-engineered concrete, and detonated inside. The precision required was beyond anything he'd seen in decades of military service. Then, The second bunker exploded. Then the third. Methodical. Systematic. The Iowa was working down a target list, destroying fortifications one at a time with the precision of a surgeon. Japanese coastal batteries attempted to return fire. Their guns roared. Shells fell into the ocean miles short of the Iowa. The American ship was beyond their reach. The Japanese gun crews could only watch and die as their positions were systematically eliminated. Survivors were found days later when Marines swept the position. Shell-shocked, traumatized, some catatonic. American intelligence officers conducted interviews, trying to understand what had broken these veteran soldiers. One prisoner laughed, a broken, hollow sound. "Fight? Fight what? We never saw the ship. Just explosions from nowhere. Our bunkers, our guns, our ammunition dumps, everything just gone. Erased." He paused, stared at the interrogator. What kind of gun can do that? The psychological impact proved as devastating as the physical destruction. Japanese military doctrine was built on the battleship as the ultimate naval weapon. The decisive fleet engagement, ship against ship, gun against gun. But the Americans had created something that broke those rules. The Yamato and Musashi, Japan's super battleships, were larger than the Iowa, more heavily armored, mounting bigger guns, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't reach, and the Iowa class could reach everything. Japanese admirals began avoiding engagements. This wasn't cowardice, it was mathematics. You cannot win a fight where the enemy can hurt you, but you cannot hurt them back. The Iowa-class battleships created a bubble of control 24 miles in every direction. Enter that bubble, you die. Stay outside, you're irrelevant. Japanese planners called it the zone of death. American sailors used simpler terminology, maximum effective range. But here's what truly distinguished the Iowa class: consistency. These guns could fire day after day, week after week, month after month, without losing accuracy. Other navies' long-range guns would degrade. Barrels would wear. Accuracy would decline after a few hundred shots. The Iowa's 16-inch guns, each barrel was rated for 300 full-charge shots, and they could be replaced at sea if needed. The ship carried spare barrels, a floating fortress that could maintain its killing power indefinitely. Japanese intelligence analyzed captured shell fragments, studied the composition. The Americans were using advanced steel alloys and manufacturing techniques Japan couldn't replicate. But beyond metallurgy, America had industrial capacity. Japan could build one super battleship at a time, slowly, carefully. America built 4 Iowa-class battleships faster than Japan built one Yamato, and the Iowas were faster, more reliable, more accurate. Industrial warfare. America's true superweapon wasn't the atomic bomb. It was the ability to build anything better than anyone else, and build it faster. March 1945. Okinawa, the final major naval campaign. Japan made one last desperate gamble. Operation 10 Go. Send the Yamato, the pride of the fleet, on a one-way suicide mission. No air cover. Barely enough fuel to reach Okinawa. The plan? Beach the ship. Use it as an unsinkable fortress. Let the crew die defending it. American intelligence learned of the plan within hours, sent carrier aircraft to intercept, but also positioned the Iowa and other battleships just in case the Yamato broke through. The Iowa's gun crews prepared. They'd heard stories about the Yamato, largest battleship in the world. 18.1-inch guns, armor that no torpedo could penetrate. But they weren't worried. They'd done the math. At 20 miles, The Yamato's shells would be falling at a steep angle, striking top armor, where the Iowa was well protected. But the Iowa's shells at that range would arrive at a flatter trajectory, striking side armor, where the Yamato was vulnerable despite its thickness. The engagement never happened. American aircraft found the Yamato first, sank it with torpedoes and bombs before it could reach the American fleet. Some historians call it fortunate that the Iowa never faced the Yamato in a gunnery duel. American fire control officers disagreed. "We would have won," one officer said decades later. "The Yamato had bigger guns and heavier armor, but we could hit from farther away. We would have hit first. In naval combat, first hit wins. Always." The Yamato sank without firing a shot at an American battleship. The Iowa served through World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War. 60 years of service because no enemy could match its capabilities. Today, the USS Iowa sits as a museum in Los Angeles. You can tour it, walk the decks, stand next to those massive 16-inch guns, touch the barrels, cold steel, silent now, but look closely. You can still see the wear marks, the scars from hundreds of shots fired in anger. Each gun barrel a testament to American engineering, to the men who designed them, built them, fired them, and to the Japanese sailors who faced them and learned what true range means. The Iowa-class battleships were never defeated in combat, never damaged by enemy fire, because no enemy could get close enough to hurt them before those guns reached out 24 miles and touched them first. That's the psychological range. It reached much farther than 24 miles. Every Japanese naval officer who studied the Iowa class, every admiral who planned operations had to factor in those guns, had to ask, can we get close enough to fight? Or will we die before we even see them? Usually, the answer was the second one. That's the power of overwhelming technological superiority. It doesn't just win battles. It wins battles without fighting them. This was the story of the gun that made the Japanese Navy ask, what kind of gun is that? The kind that could reach farther, hit harder, and win wars from beyond the horizon.